Philip, please take the stand. And we'd like to talk about understanding the Internet of Things and interact real estate. Philip Roth.
Thank you. Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think following Bas is going to be really interesting because the theme today is a journey, taking us, I hope, to some technology which will be new and which will change not just how people work in buildings, but I think how buildings themselves function. And the journey is interesting. It's about, obviously, the kind of familiar circles of the future of work, the collision between space, people, and technology. But I want to focus on the overlap, really, between buildings and technology, the kind of vanishing infrastructure, and this idea of real-time real estate and the idea of a thin building, which I'll explain to you. Some of it's coming from the research that we did with Mark Dixon a couple of years ago, and the structure of some of the themes of these kind of 6 colliding forces for the future of work. But I want to focus on the ICT theme today, and that's my kind of key focus. But the others all kind of intertwine and make sense of a bigger picture. Just 2 slides on our credentials. We've been around for 19 years and have been really lucky to work with some fascinating organisations all over the globe, from Macquarie in Sydney to the Gates Foundation in Seattle, Nokia in Helsinki and others, on workplace futures and transformation and bringing great people together. And Jeremy Myson, my co-author, is in the audience. We write books together and we're writing our next at the moment. So we're still hungry for new ideas and looking around the world for the latest innovations, and you'll hear from Jeremy later on today. So the technology, what's going on? It really does borrow back to culture and work style. I think you have to always start from where many people are. We're very privileged, I think, in the Netherlands to see some remarkable innovation in workspaces, such as the building we're in. But you have to go back and say that most people, certainly in the US, still work in the kind of Taylorist, supervised nature of this crazy nature that the desk is the kind of predominant place of work. The piece of wood or MDF is the thing that kind of ties us back to coming into buildings. And it has been the kind of paraphernalia of office life that's dominated so much over the last few years. And the idea that we're actually still not doing much that's different from our fathers and grandfathers when it's kind of rationalized. And that's due to the fact that most of the technology still anchors us to this piece of wood, which I think our children will think is a crazy construct. The idea of calling a piece of wood to speak to a person, I think, will appear more and more ludicrous as the next generation comes into the workplace. So where is technology taking us? Well, Bas mentioned the cloud, and almost every organization is now moving to kind of cloud-enabled people connecting through the cloud. Obviously, in a personal way, we're using Flickr and a whole range of things. But what's interesting to me is cloud workspace. You know, what does workspace look like when it's cloud-enabled? And in WorkTech in San Francisco, we had a presentation from Accenture saying that they now envision workplace as a service. So the vision eventually of provisioning work as we're seeing software as a service, as an end game to where they want to head. And of course, Microsoft, Cisco, Google, and others are building these remarkable spaces to deliver not just data and processing from the cloud, but of course now software from the cloud. And Bas and Hans mentioned virtualization, the idea that you can share devices. You know, whatever you choose to pick up or sit down at, you log in and you see the same experience. Means that place and dependence can be separated really effectively for the first time. And it means that buildings no longer have to house this. You know, the days of housing huge equipment rooms for the servers and what goes with them, the power, the cooling, that can vanish very quickly. And really what we're saying is the delivery of everything to any device you carry, and wherever you log in, the same experience, what you see will be identical, whether you pick up an iPad or a Surface, or you log into a virtual desktop in a kind of third space, you pop into your spaces, you log in, you get the same experience that you would do at home. Changes the psychology. Why have I commuted for an hour to come into a building if I can get anything I want from wherever? So I think the psychology of work will change quite quickly. And I think a lot more is coming. I think we've talked a bit about thin clients. You've heard about the idea of consumerization. And actually Mexico is now globally the leaders in the vision of consumerization of IT. So 73% of people in Mexican corporate surveyed now prefer to bring their own device to work. So it's not a kind of European or US-centric phenomena. But the next, I think, trend is gamification. This word that's come out recently, the idea of leaderboards and presenting information. What might a building look like if it was gamified? Could we envision gamification of real estate to show its real-time performance? So, the idea of this thin building is the fact that it no longer houses the heavy infrastructure, the paper, as we've heard. When you come into a space, it's about being with people and not being there to pick up your files or to use your personalized equipment. And this is going to go hand in hand with a radical leap in wireless. There are 2 new standards coming, Wi-Fi AC, which comes in the next couple of years, which will take speeds to gigabit levels, and Intel now backing WiGig, announced in September, which takes it even further. And what I love is the fact that you pick up your new device today, whether it's an iPad mini or a Surface, and it has no Ethernet port. You cannot physically plug a cable in. So we're now more and more reliant on the fact that you will have just ubiquitous connectivity going forwards. But it scares people. There are many IT people still. We had one yesterday who said, oh, we can't trust wireless, it's still not safe and it's not fast enough. So you have this kind of real paradigm shift. But I think what's interesting for us is it's coming very quickly, and the thin building will be a really interesting construct, I think, going forwards. Can it reverse obsolescence? Can we begin to use older buildings in places like Amsterdam or the City of London and not invest in kind of brand new buildings in the future? It's a big question. Now, when you look into social networks, we're all used to Twitter and how we link together on Twitter. But what if you begin to map real-time networks? That's a map of who's emailing who inside a building. And when you look at that, you can begin to see the real-time clusters and networks. You can understand the real work that's being done. So why couldn't we accommodate the building based on that? Maybe it's the next evolution of activity-based working, because rather than it being random and people choosing, you can direct it based on modeling the real work. And when you have people like Stephen Johnson backing this, so his great book, which I recommend, Where Good Ideas Come From, talks about the adjacent possible, talks about hives of innovation. He's modeling the real work and saying those people in the red cluster should sit together, and that's when you get real innovation. So I think property people now can begin to change their occupancy based on real clusters and networks. And this goes further. Anyone want to hazard a guess as to what this is? What's that picture of? Who wants to be brave? It's a bird's eye view of something. Any guesses? A city, someone said? Yeah. So it is a city. It's actually Albuquerque. But the blue, the light blue, is actually car parking. And the white is the space for humans in between. So the dominance of the car has been fascinating. And being in California, I was lucky enough to drive the first driverless car, in inverted commas, and it's a remarkable phenomenon. Now, these are licensed now in 3 states. In Nevada, they are all over the place. And Google have now done hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kilometers of journeys in driverless cars. And that's what the car sees in the bottom right-hand corner. That's how the car itself navigates the city. To do that, it has to carry some quite clever kit. And that's the raw stuff that's being tested in Nevada. It looks a bit clunky. And I think this will come into the office. And we'll have the same process in navigating buildings. Now, today, it would look like that. And I'm not sure many people want to walk around with all these sensors, but it's coming. I mean, Google Glass is real. It's been launched. It's the most remarkable initiative, giving you phenomenal augmented reality to something that you wear. And we think, as we dismantled an iPhone, and when you look inside and you look at the gyrometer and the accelerometer and what's coming, we think that very soon you'll be carrying technology which will link into buildings in very, very different ways. And therefore we're predicting a building nervous system, something very different that connects all inanimate objects and the people inside buildings in a very different way in the future. And there are many, many people doing this. Obviously, Cisco's a major player, and Honeywell and Schneider, and many people doing this. And the technologies are coming from all sides of the spectrum. That little black speck on the thumb is an RFID chip in Japan. It's now got that small. So we predict billions. I think Cisco's now saying 50 billion connected devices by 2017 or 18. And what does that mean for real estate when almost any inanimate object can talk and connect? People are beginning to do this. They're using the first aspects of RFID, radio frequency identification. But now what's happening is the stuff's coming into mobile phones. The new Samsungs have a technology called near field communication, NFC, inside them. You just touch to check in or touch to vote and give you feedback on the food you're eating in the staff canteen, as Google are now doing. And you can do lots of remarkable things now with the devices you carry. And here Google in Mountain View are using automated signs to present information using ambient light to power them with built-in wireless. So in the future, you can have digital displays almost anywhere you want, on demand, through a building. This begins to have some rather interesting applications. Here, a bank looking at real-time location of people. This looks like worker bees moving around down to about 2 inches. And this is becoming more and more interesting. This is a building in Singapore where now as you walk in, your mobile smartphone can drill down live based on where you're standing in the office. It's digitized the interior workspace. It can pinpoint where you are, show you all the desks around you, what's free, what's booked, and of course tell you who is where. So it's beginning to tell you you can check in here with a Microsoft tag by just showing your phone. And it also does 3 different ways of measuring where you are in the building. It uses Wi-Fi signals and your link to the screen. And then it begins to show you an image of the people in the space in real time, your co-workers. So this becomes quite interesting. What we're finding, I think, is the ability to bring buildings and people together for the first time. And of course, it doesn't take much to leap from that to your LinkedIn or your SharePoint or your Yammer contacts and suddenly tell you that in a big organization, someone you should meet is standing 10 meters away, and start to kind of engineer the encounters that will be the next big play for innovative companies. So we think this is coming, and coming very soon, and it can then link to energy consumption. You can hibernate space. There's a whole range of things coming, even looking at the water levels in a plant pot through automated chips. And I think what we'll find is that it will challenge space. The ghastly meeting rooms that we have with the huge barriers of getting people together will be very different in the future. And we're beginning to see radical innovation from Stanford's IREM on the bottom left to Ernst & Young's Cube and a whole range of innovations globally. So lastly for you, what's next? What am I seeing in the labs? And there's a couple of quite cool things that I want to share with you. One is from Microsoft Labs. And what they're showing me is the idea of gamification. Can we go back in that? Can we just go back one slide and get that video working? Yeah. There we go. So this is the Kinect from the Xbox, but this is Kinect for business. This is an adaptation of Kinect, and it's aimed at business environments where the vision might be that we end up as players in a game at work. So Microsoft's vision is that every interior space would have Kinect sensors built into them. So here, the camera on the bottom, or the top middle is the real camera. The Kinect sensor is sensing my hand. I touch a surface like the wall. I signify what I want it to do, and I can then use that wall as a virtual interactive board to make notes or interact with. And you can assign any activity to any object immediately, and you can begin to model people in real time. So what does that mean? No answers, but could we end up being party to a game within the workplace? We love what Intel's doing. The idea of WiDi, which comes out this year, wireless display, no more cables to throw an image from whatever you're carrying onto any screen or device. So at long last, we can just share things instantly without having to find VGA cables and so on. And I think also, for me, wireless power is again here and a fabulous innovation. It's been a long time coming. The Tesla coil's been around, but you see the phone, you drop it on a surface, the light goes on, and it starts trickle charging. But some of the innovation is fascinating. The middle picture, the orange see-through bag, is apparently the world's first ever wireless handbag. And we were showing this by a fascinating company, and their vision, of course, is you come along to a bar or restaurant, you drop your handbag, and everything inside automatically recharges. They didn't say what was inside the handbag that needed recharging, of course, but that was their vision. and perhaps the kind of attaché case, which will also kind of just be dropped and everything trickle charges, is coming. You've got power moats that will go into tables and they will trickle charge to about an inch of wood. But I love the fact that it's now not just on devices. There's a KitchenAid blender with no power cable working totally wirelessly just because of its proximity over a power moat. And it will work with saucepans and a whole range of things. And you move it, and of course the power stops. Move it back onto the moat, and it will power up again. But what I love is the idea that you can now look at some radical innovation. And the last one I want to show you is the idea that you can use printer's ink with wireless power built into the shelf. So in the shelf is a wireless power coil. You put a magazine on it, and the ink itself starts reacting to the power, trickle charging, contactless, and who knows where this could go. So there's some great innovations coming, and there's a whole lot more we could think about. But I think technology will have a huge part to play in where work and workplace go. I think, as we heard, and we'll hear more today, we're on this very early stage of a journey towards activity-based working. So the future of work, to my mind, is fascinating. It's challenging, and this kind of audience is about creating that new vision. There's much more to learn about, and if you want some more of the research we've done, people like Microsoft and Regis, let me know and we can send it to you. But I hope that's been a good journey and a kick-off for some good thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip, for this interesting presentation. Are there any questions of those? Question over there.
Good morning, Duncan Young from Lendlease. Just wanted to ask a question. Are you actually seeing... Duncan Young from Lendlease. Are you actually seeing the emergence of old buildings in cities such as London being revamped, as you're suggesting? Are there any examples today that you can talk about?
Yes, I mean, we could maybe have a comment from Martin from Spaces. I mean, I'm seeing plenty of really exciting examples of older building stock totally being enhanced, big interventions, but brought back to life, and without the need for thinking about the classic traditional raised floor, ceiling heights, and so on. So absolutely. Martin, do you want to comment, or several about?
I'll come later.
Okay, later on. Fine. Okay, perfect.
Any more questions? Right now.
When you started talking about the different localization, personal localizations, capabilities, what are you seeing also as privacy issues being involved in that? I think it's something, especially here in the Netherlands,
Yeah.
that is definitely an issue.
It's a key question, and everyone's asking the same question. I think there are two or three answers. One is, if your mobile phone is on now, your operator knows you're here, and that data is now becoming sold to retailers and others. So there's a big privacy issue for all sorts of reasons coming. The findings, when we did the bank, is we asked people to volunteer to have the tag. Nobody didn't take it, and this was a call centre, actually, the one I showed you. And the reason they all volunteered to use it was to save energy. They could see that by actually using the building in a real-time way, the building itself could consume much less energy, and they bought into it from that perspective. So my gut feel is there will always be some people who kind of get frightened, and we can make it anonymous, but most people seem to be, especially below a certain age, devoid of any issues around privacy.
I've got one question myself.
Sure.
You showed us a lot of technologies, some of them really experimental, but we all know that these technologies won't make it to the office, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think they need to be appropriated, actually? So what do you think is the most important ICT invention that will make it to the office and really change the way we work?
For the next, in the next phase, I think it will be the connected building,
Right.
which will include things such as Zigbee and a range of IP, addressable technologies. I mean, when we were out in Facebook a few weeks ago to look at their new campus in Menlo Park, and the innovations there were remarkable. I mean, they're really using Facebook itself on huge touchscreens all over the campus to enable in-building social networking. And I think that will be the killer, is buildings today are anonymous. They have no idea really who's in. And I think the next big evolution will be the building bringing people together when they need to, engineering encounters. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Philip, very much.